Yo, in the last recording, I had such a nice intro, you know? Waning moon. Greetings, salutations, and good now. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevis Major, doing it major. And in this video, we're going to be doing our weekly forecast for this week, the 3rd of May up until the 10th of May. Waning moon. And we're going to be experiencing the waning moon. And we know that while the moon is waning, we should be gaining, as the moon is releasing back all of the energy that we would have been putting in before we got to the full moon, where we should have been resting and relaxing. And this week being able to harvest all of the fruits from the seeds that we would have been planting. But here's the kicker: if you were planting bad seeds, you know what I'm saying, putting in bad work, not being productive, gossiping, you know, not doing the things that you were supposed to be doing, then this week after the full moon, as it's waning, and you think you're going to be gaining, I mean, you will be gaining, but it's not what you're going to be expecting. But if you were planting, you know, productivity, love, sustainability, stability, you know, planting all of those good Taurus seeds, then this week you could be looking out for some good fruits, esoterically speaking. And so we're going to be getting into this video so we know, you know, what this week is going to be having in store for us. Let's put it that way. All right. So drop a like on this video if you made it through, you know, the full moon. I was watching a clip on the internet last night, and the guy was saying, if tomorrow is a destination that we need to get to, some people ain't gonna make it. I'm saying, if yesterday didn't exist and tomorrow doesn't exist, and we're here and right now, and tomorrow is a place, a destination that we gotta get to, some people just can't make it. You know what I'm saying? You just don't got that internal will, you don't got that internal fire, you ain't got a personality, you ain't got an ego, you ain't got a drive. And so maybe this video is going to help you get a bit of drive and get a bit of direction for this week to come. All right. So off the bat, waning moon. So if you were already having a chaotic full moon, which was over the weekend, then you could be looking to a chaotic week as the moon is waning. But if you had a peaceful, relaxing weekend, you know, to a certain degree, because we know that, you know, Earth is not all roses, all a bit of roses, right? Earth is hard, but at the same time, you know, if you were experiencing the more positive aspect of the energy, as you were putting in, leading up to the full moon, then this week, you know, we could be looking forward to being able to just reap the rewards of all of that good work that we've been putting in. All right, so the opening theme for this week is settling down. All right. This week is going to be settling us fully into the Taurus energy. Today's the 3rd, which takes us 13 degrees or 14 degrees into the Taurus season. Mercury is also entering Taurus, which is going to slow down our mind, asking us to think more about patience, being calculated, being intentional, and having a bit more practicality with our thoughts. There's still going to be some pressure and heat, as Mars is going to square Jupiter, which could make people impulsive, reactionary, even a bit overconfident, and prone to overextending yourself. So you got to be careful as we slow down, not to speed up too much. Mercury is going to square Pluto, which adds mental intensity, sharper or deeper conversations. It's going to be revealing truths, even lies, you know, suspicions may arise, but we're going to be thinking deeper, and there's going to be more power behind the words that we use this week. Pluto is going to be going stationary, moving into a retrograde, which is a major shift, dealing with the collective conscious, where long and short, people are just going to be more selfish, right, to a certain extent, because you're reflecting inwards, getting a pulse on your own power, how you could transform yourself, people, places, things, and circumstances, and just, you know, the changes that need to be made beneath the surface. And at the end, you know, of the week, well, not the end of the week, but one of the last transits is this Venus Lilith conjunction, which brings about more, well, a rawer essence of love and desire, self-worth, tying into beauty, attraction, and sexual magnetism. you know. So this week is about slowing down the mind, but not ignoring, the things that have came to the surface over the full moon and that are going to arise. We just need to think more intentionally, speak carefully, and move with purpose over the week. And look out for excess, doing things in excess. We got to keep everything in moderation this week. All right, so the key aspects, we have Mercury entering Taurus, that's on the 3rd. On the 5th, we have Mars square Jupiter. On the 5th, we also have Mercury square Pluto, so that's a big day in the next 2 days, or Tuesday and Mars Day. Mercury also sextiles the node, and then on the 6th, that's when Pluto goes stationary as it prepares to retrograde, and Venus is going to conjunct Lilith. Alright, so we're going to start with the day-to-day breakdown. If you made it this far in the video, drop a like, drop a comment down below, let me know your zodiac sign and something interesting about you, some interesting placement or something, or just say I survived the full moon, because January it was chaotic. Alright, so let's get into this part. Alright, so on the 3rd, Mercury enters Taurus. Now, Mercury deals with thinking, communicating, how you process information and how you share this information, relate to others, right? Your relationships and how you maintain communication and think about things, even local travel, okay? Things that happen in your community and between your, friends and associations and family and stuff like this, okay? All right. Well, that's more on the Gemini side, but Mercury has a strong link to Gemini. But anyway, let's not get carried away. After Mercury was in Aries, which was fast, reactive, impulsive, bold, courageous, we got to, make a stand for ourselves. Now, Mercury's asking us to slow down in Taurus, where things became slower, steadier, more practical, more deliberate, more grounded. There's a bit more resistance, however, more stability. And so there's a sort of emphasis of not trying to take the short road or the shortcut, but doing, going the long way, which is going to be more stable, okay? This is good for planning, making practical decisions, building ideas, speaking with substance or about things with substance, actually following through, thinking in terms of value, money, quality over quantity, and just getting results. Like, we really want to get some results going forward, and so we need to be planning and preparing ourselves and positioning ourselves. On the shadow side, Taurus is fixated, and so when Mercury goes there, it could double down on our stubbornness. Taurus is a bit slow, so we could be slow to adopt. Again, Taurus is a fixated sign, so maybe just adding more fuel to our fixated tendencies and just holding on too tight to your perspective. It could have you thinking more tightly about money, more tightly about relationships, more tightly about your longevity and your sustainability. And so what thoughts, what habits, what person, place, thing, situation, and circumstance deserves building on, and what thoughts or ideas or just mental noise, okay? Mental fog. So that's one of the questions we need to ask ourselves as Mercury, goes through Taurus. What ideas are you going to be building on, or what ideas you need to be, not giving so much energy to? On the 5th, Mars is going to square Pluto. No, Mars is going to square Jupiter. I always Jupiter, Pluto. All right, let's get it together, because it's Jupiter, the planet of expansion, opportunities, good luck, things being accumulated, right? They say that Jupiter is one of the largest planets, so just think about things getting larger, more abundance, just more, right? More. And so more doesn't necessarily mean good, right? If you have chaos in your life, then more chaos, right? If you have enemies or haters, more enemies and haters. If you have love in your life, though, then more love, right? So we see how Jupiter is expanding, but Mars squaring is a more difficult aspect. This is one of the biggest cautions of this week. Mars, let's talk about the placement of Mars. First of all, Mars is in Aries. Oh my God, right? And Mars loves to be in Aries. Mars is quite confident here with what you want to do, with your purpose, with your current mission, with your endeavors. However, with the square is a challenge, right? Jupiter brings expansion, but this one is challenging you. So you could become more overconfident. You could be rushing too much when Taurus is asking us to slow down. Ego could be inflated. You think you could be more capable than you actually are. Maybe impatient. Again, when Taurus is asking us to be patient. Mars, quite masculine, quite direct, quite just actionary. So you're fast to act, but you may be wasting your energy, talking more than you could actually, biting more than you could actually chew, or taking on more than you could actually execute. And so there's a conflict between who you actually are and how you want to present yourself, right? There's some positive aspects, of course, from this transit. It could show up positively as you being, ambitious and bold, and, trying to be courageous, motivational, or, just kind of taking actions and going big. But, the risk is excess, like doing things too much, right? Doing too much at this time. Remember, it's a waning moon. So we're looking for the moon to be giving us, right? We're looking to be more receptive at this time. And so we need to be balanced, all right? This transit with Mars squaring Jupiter, and I'm already feeling it, like it could affect travel, right? Let's just put that in the forefront, you know what I'm saying? So make sure that the engines are working, transmissions are good, you know what I'm saying? Fuel is good, brakes is good, you know what I'm saying? Or you might need to be making sure that you lace up your sneakers, or you have the bus fee or something. But we're looking out for travel or transportation, right? So that's one, but that's not the most important one. Again, ego, angry, masculine energy, conflict, expanding, so arguments, vehicles or motors, transportation, fuel, even the war. But we're talking about more personal. So if you got enemies, right? Look out for conflict with your enemies, maybe spending or feeling some sort of like loss. Business decisions can be affected. Also, your sexual impulses, coming off of the Scorpio full moon, and also what's going to be happening with Lilith. Over promising or just trying to do too much, having a inflated ego and trying to appear a certain way when you can't deliver, and also acting before thinking. And so this aspect kind of challenges us to stay within the bounds, right? Because, okay, let's say the sport we are playing, or the court that we are on, the arena is the Taurus arena, where we got to slow down, be intentional, be stable, be practical. But then we have, these other aspects. So it's not that they're not good, but the theme, the theme of this week, it may come off as not being fitting, right? So we need to try to balance this Mars square Jupiter energy. On the same day, Mercury is going to be squaring Pluto. So your mind is going to be going on 100, but it's going to be thinking about deep things, things on a deep level, right? So deeper thinking, penetrating insight. You're trying to get to the deeper depths of a situation, a circumstance, a person, place, or thing. And so while you're doing that, it may even lead to obsession, like you're thinking too hard about a person, place, or thing. If it's a person or situation, you could become suspicious because there's a power struggle, right? You can't control a person, place, thing, situation, or circumstance. You only could control yourself. And so, if you're not being able to balance out these energies, again, we already discussed about arguments and, certain types of conflicts. And every time we have squares, like you're squaring off with a person. But Pluto, it gets deep, when it comes to psychological or things that happen in the past, things that you need to let go or overcome. And so on the 5th, it could get a bit tricky with those 2 or 3 transits happening all at the same time, right? On the good side, with the Mercury squaring Pluto, is good for research, right? Exposing the truths, confronting certain hidden things, being more strategic, saying what was buried, but hopefully it's in the confines of a contained situation, because again, we talked about enemies, and so Mars is quite aggressive, expanding aggression. You don't want to get into physical altercations, right? So one thing we got to do is beware of overthinking, paranoia, argument, being too fixated on negativity, trying to dominate using your words, or somebody dominating you using their words, and just going even into like mental spirals, right? Negative mental spirals. This week, the moon, waning moon, gonna be revealing certain truths that we have to face, certain patterns, certain habits that have been dictating, our life, and certain circumstances and situations. And so, again, how do we navigate? How do we face these things? Especially know that Mercury is now in Taurus. When it was in Aries, we could have just blown over it, but now, we need to kind of slow down. And so, do you hold on more tightly? Do you, start relinquishing control of the results and just putting in the work, right? On the 5th, Mercury also sextiles the nodes, which helps us because the node speaks towards like, your destiny, your fate, or your spiritual evolution, as you overcome or rise above your zodiac sign into your next transition. So an opportunity, right, for us to have, the right conversations, or using all of the information in a positive way, meaningful messages, or having a certain mental clarity, which allows us to take all of the situations and circumstances and use it towards Taurus energy, which is growth. And just communicating, again, because we're talking about Mercury, communicating, that helps you get towards alignment, right? So again, just speaking to the right people, making the decisions that need to be made, hearing something helpful or sharing something helpful, and just choosing a better line of thought. So even though this week is going to be jam-packed mentally, right? Mercury is doing a lot, Mars is doing a whole lot. We need to be able to, find that middle ground, right, through all of the intensity. And, there's support in saying or hearing the right things, and that has a lot to do with perspective. All right. May 6th, we got Pluto stationary. This is subtle but yet powerful, because when Pluto goes stationary, into a retrograde, the theme is going to get a lot stronger. So Pluto is this planet of doom, gloom, death, and destruction. That's how I like to describe it. In a classical sense, it's about change and transformation, or the end stage of something. So the death, and then, the birth. And so there's a lot of introspection, power dynamic. We talk about shadow work, internal transformations that over a period of time they could show externally, reviewing certain patterns and habits, looking at what's been hidden and unconfronted, reassessing, deeper motives and intentions, especially when it comes to attachments, detaching, fears. Pluto is in Aquarius too. So the collective theme is around systems and technology and networks and groups, people who are in power, and just being able to control innovation and technology and, the way forward, right? The collective conscious. And so there's going to be almost like a, a shift back to, I guess, more classical or traditional ways of thinking, maybe partially, because the retrograde is going to go forward, but it seems that we're kind of going back to more classical or traditional systems, classical forms of technology and networking and coming together. So things kind of moving more analog and offline, even though everything is still happening online, right? So that's something that we need to be mindful of. We could already see remnants of that as fuel prices go up, you know, inflation is going up. We may be thinking, hey, how we could we get, similar results without having to give up as much time? Well, maybe give up, you might have to give up more time. um, but just where you direct the time, right? You're gonna direct the time to these corporations to get the money to pay these high prices, or you're gonna direct the time more in, building a stable, sustainable system that could endure for a long time, that doesn't encourage you to continuously give your resource to the system just to get the basic commodities, right? So maybe that's something that I'm going to be thinking about. I don't know about you, but so personally, there's different ways of interpreting what's going to be happening with this Pluto station movement and then the retrograde. So with the collective conscious and also individual, some less dramatic, some more dramatic. But in some way, shape, or form, we're going to be thinking about, our personal power to control ourselves, regulate ourselves, and control our outer world, and then the larger world, and so forth, as your power, could increase. All right, on the 6th of May, we got Venus conjuncting Lilith. This is one of the more fascinating parts of the week, because Venus, we know, is all about love, which is compromise. What are you willing to do for a person, place, thing, circumstance, situation that brings you joy, harmony, or pleasure, right? So Venus, is about attraction and beauty. However, there's also a dark side, which is what are you willing to give up to have a certain level of magnetism. And so there's a heavy emphasis on sacrifice as well. So Venus conjuncting Lilith, just raw desire, right? Untamed attraction, because Lilith is like this raw feminine energy, right? All of the things that the female ain't really supposed to do but really wants to do, even if you're male, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the Lilith energy, So just taboo themes about love and sexuality, and you may be feeling like, oh, because I'm a man, I'm not supposed to do this to be able to get that, and because you're female, what am I supposed to do to get this, to get that, you know what I'm saying, in terms of like sensuality, sexuality. So certain tensions about, rejection and desirability and self-worth, or being worthy, or the word who deserves this, or entitlement, or who is leading the relationship, or I'm the prize, or who's the table, just a lot of that type of energy, right? On May the 6th. So we got to look out for that, especially if you're in a marriage or relationship, situationship, or whatever the case may be. Just a situation where you may have to be honest about your emotions, about what you really, really want. You know what I'm saying? And this is the opportunity where, as a man, you got to drop your nuts and really stand on business. And as a woman, you know what I'm saying, you got to clinch your ties and really stand on business. You know what I'm saying? And y'all have that spiritual negotiation about what are you willing to do? Baby, baby. All right, and then y'all come to some sort of terms and agreements, and Before you know it, you guys are into like a little spiritual marriage, you know what I'm saying? Mental marriage, all the way down until it could play out physically, right? But they don't teach y'all about those type of, you know what I'm saying, esoteric spiritual marriages, you know what I'm saying? And it's just about what are you willing to do, you know what I'm saying, based on your personal spiritual powers, you know what I'm saying? And you could go to your natal chart to see your traits and your gifts and your talents and see if you could support the person, and based on their gifts and talents and attributes and their zodiac, if they could support you. And you got to be able to be honest though about what you need and see if they're willing to do. Kiss it, baby, baby. All right, so this can show up as attraction that feels intense or forbidden, you know what I'm saying, if you want to tap into the dark arts or not. But you need to confront what's being suppressed within yourself in terms of your own sexuality, your own sexual desires or intimate desires and needs in a relationship and even outside of a relationship. And this also gives us an opportunity to reclaim your self-worth. Now, this is a tricky thing because the society is warped in, you know what I'm saying, the whole perspective of self-worth. We're not going to get into that. But, be honest about what you want, not because that's what someone on the internet says that you should have or you deserve or you're entitled to. You know what I'm saying? You got to look at your current situation. You got to look at your current location, right? And all of the different people, situations, and circumstances that are at play. So this week is about attraction or your attractability as well. What's your edge when it comes to beauty? Wanting to have freedom with love and sensuality and sexuality, however, still being in the confines of safety and security and stability, the Taurus energy. And speaking and embodying just your desire for more honesty. And I feel like everybody wants that, you know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, like, women be saying they don't want to know certain things, you know what I'm saying? But the same thing that they don't want to know is the thing that makes them attracted to the man in the first place, you know what I'm saying? So, like, y'all gotta read between the lines. And even the same thing for the dudes is like, the same thing you don't want a female to do is the same thing that peeped your eye, you know what I'm saying? So now just because you guys are in a situationship, you want her to stop doing the same things that attracted you, you know what I'm saying? And so that's a whole conversation that y'all need to have if y'all working towards, the spiritual marriage that we described above. All right, so on the shadow side, this is straight up drama. I ain't even gonna lie, because again, we already lived in a society where it's open when it comes to information, all sorts of ideologies and ideas and thoughts. And so everyone could be influenced, and at the same time, everyone has their individuality, how they perceive all of the information that they're receiving, and how they Mercury, process it and communicate it with the person who they're dealing with. And so if I want one thing and you want something else, however, subconsciously we both want each other, but on the surface we're projecting that we want certain things based on our standards or the self-worth that you're projecting, then that's like a little drama soap opera, you know what I'm saying? And even if we take that out of the context of, romantic relationships, let's put it into work, or maybe like a sports team or some extracurricular activities, when it comes to what you want to do, how you want to present yourself, just your raw emotions, and that person, how they want to express themselves as their true, feminine nature, as embodying their emotions, and it doesn't align, then there's a clash, right? Also, there's a lot of projection, because you see how I created a scenario, how I projected my imagination onto these two individuals, and how a third individual could be observing, everybody doing the same thing. So there's a lot of projection, a lot of manipulation, a lot of seduction, a lot of, trying to get your desires met, right? Or just the shame associated with your desires, and acted from a wounded place of pride, right? And all of this is kind of happening in the Gemini space. So, it could happen again in like a local group setting, like where you work, not really too much to do with like the work and you getting the money, but just the people in the workplace, or you commuting to work. So the people and that you meet along those local travels, maybe you're on a little sports team or you do a little extracurricular thing here or there. You got a little YouTube channel, so you're building a following, you're communicating your thoughts with people, you know what I'm saying? Drama is brewing. I'm saying there's some drama in the mix. All right. And so what do you truly desire? What do you truly want? Whether you're standing in, your femininity or your masculinity, just what do you truly want, and are you honest enough to admit that? Like I wanna XYZ, right? And a lot of people are afraid to do that just because the rejection, or the shame. Like, I express my darkest, deepest desires, and we're not even talking about sexually, but let's say that, okay, you're in a band situation, like I'm the backup singer, but my darkest, deeper desires to be the lead singer. Like, are you gonna admit that? Like, there's already a lead singer, so how do you go and say, I wanna be the lead singer? That's what you desire. But if you say that, there's gonna be drama, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you really want that, how do you go about doing that? Like, there's some manipulation, you know what I'm saying? So this aspect is gonna be a tricky one. All right. So again, knowing what you want deeply inside and being able to express it honestly, and at the end of the day, you got to be able to stand on business. All right. If they don't, I'm trying to come up with a saying. If it doesn't comply, then you got to let it fly, right? And that's what a lot of people are afraid to do. Like, we're living in a world with 7.7 billion people. So that's 7.7 different situations and things and circumstances that you got to deal with. So you don't necessarily got to deal with the current one. However, just know that you're going to have to be dealing with something. Like, everything is a deal, everything is a negotiation, everything is a contract. And it's not going to be perfect. There's certain compromises and stipulations and agreements. And if this goes the right way, then this is the outcome. And if it goes the wrong way, then these are, the outcomes as well. So we got to take all of that into consideration. All right, so let's try to wrap up. I didn't want to make this video this long-winded, but this week, even though we're into the Taurus season, there's a heavy emphasis on the fire energy. There's a strong Aries influence, right? Because there's a lot of planets still in Aries. So yes, Taurus season, the sun wants us to focus on, again, being grounded, being stable, sustainability, doing things that we want to sustain over a long period of time. However, there's given urgency, there's giving courage, there's giving heat, there's giving momentum, there's giving fighting, fire, imposing your will or your imagination. And so Taurus, is going to help us to ground that, bring value to that. Gemini, right? Because Venus is in Gemini. Gemini brings, just open communication and opening up the mental playing field for stronger communication or relatability, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, right? So this week is asking us to move, not recklessly, but to think, but not obsessively, right? So we're moving, not recklessly, we're thinking, not obsessively. We need to ground our words, our desires, and decisions in something real, right? In something real. Okay, so if we look at the elemental emphasis for this week, again, we got 5 points in, 4 points actually in fire, 2 in earth, 3 in air, 1 in water. So fire is dominant, air secondary, earth is supportive, and water is low. So we're more on the fire side, and so we're gonna use the earth, to really ground out the fire. And when it comes to the modal emphasis, we got a lot of points in cardinal. So the cardinal energy is the strongest. So this week, again, it emphasizes, initiation, movement, action, pressure. But the fixated placement of Taurus wants steadiness. All right. And so the mutable placement brings flexibility, right? It brings a bit of flexibility. When you have the cardinal and the fixated, we could kind of balance it out. All right. So the practical advice for this week as we close out is to one, pull up my notes, slow down the mind. That's going to happen anyway because Mercury's moving into Taurus, but we got to want that, right? So fewer thoughts, better thoughts, and we're thinking about quality over quantity at this time, you know what I'm saying? So if you're a player, you might want to trim down your roster. I'm saying if you're in these streets, you know what I'm saying, as a 304, you want to slim down your roster, you know what I'm saying? Whatever you're producing production-wise at this point in time, you want to make sure you're not rushing and you're doing things, I'm saying quality over quantity, and just wanting to do things that are useful, be productive, and want productive or productability around you. Number two, don't force what needs wisdom. Right? I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote down this one, but Mars is squaring Jupiter, right? And that could make you act fast and act out of impulse. So make sure that you're not overconfident, right? Don't force things. You got to know how to magnetize and start to attract things. So as you go for what you want, you got to go for it in a tactful way that if you weren't going for it, it kind of still seek you out just because you're so productive and so radiant in what you do when you do it. So when you stop doing it, people are still looking for you, right? Number three, use your words carefully. Mercury is going to square Pluto, and so your words are going to have a lot of weight. Number four, this is a usual one, but watch your reactions. This is not the week to let your anger or your pride or the Mars energy running the show, right? Number five, you got to be honest about your desires. That's going to be hard. But Venus conjuncting Lilith is asking about the truths when it comes to your attraction, your value, your sexuality, and self-worth. And if you're dealing with a person, then you got to be honest about this conversation. So we could have a situation, a relation, a marriage built on honesty, on what we both want. And number four, deeper shifts are about to happen. The Pluto Retrograde is about power and control, and it's not asking us to control everything. We got to let go of some of the results and just put in the work. And so it's asking you to notice what is changing beneath the surface.